I had this weird dream the other day. I was performing again, like good old times. It was as wonderful as I remember. The stage and the crowd were a little different, but it was still familiar. When the show was over, this odd being called me over. I assumed it was my dream trying to personify King Spades. It looked nothing like him, but I still followed his commands like it was him. He lured me into this room that I've never seen before. It wasn't familiar. I recall having an uneasy feeling about it. As I enter the room, I see the dream Spade take a seat next to the other person. Like Spades, it looked nothing like him, but it felt like Jevil. I sat in the seat next to what was supposed to be Jevil. I look over at the familiar jester, feeling better about this uncomfortable environment. That was until I noticed this person sitting across from me. I couldn't make out the details of my dream state family, but this stranger I could make out perfectly. It was this blackened figure, round yet thin, with white hands with holes carved out of them, and a pale head, bald and broken. Its face felt fake, like a ceramic mask plastered to its actual face, and its eyes void of pupils. This thing horrified me, but I couldn't look away. Like once I glanced at it, I was locked in place. I couldn't even move my head, just my eyes. But everywhere I looked, it was always in my sight's vicinity. I heard the conceived king speak to this monster. I couldn't tell what he said. All I heard was interview. After he stopped speaking, everything went quiet. The silence was deafening. The few seconds felt like hours before the being spoke. Kind of. When it spoke, it made this garbled tone, like a trash can of sounds. Wall noise. As it made its awful sound, I noticed things in the background disappearing, getting replaced by this voidness. As it kept talking, more and more things started to disappear. I began to move again. I was slowly becoming less paralyzed. I wrestled myself out of my dead state as more and more of the room got sucked into this black hole. I got out of the chair and sprinted to the exit, only for the door to melt into oblivion. I stood there, scared out of my mind, unsure of what to do. Then the floor beneath me cracked and crumbled. I tried to save myself, to no avail, as I fell into the vacuum of space. After falling for what felt like an eternity, the blackness faded into white. As this white nothingness blinded me, the air was suddenly filled with random text, randomly color-coded, popping in and out of existence. Some were just statements I could barely make out. Some were just a bunch of ones and zeros. And some were symbols that I'm sure no one could tell me what they meant. As the text surrounded me, I tried to muster up a scream, but I couldn't breathe, like I was drowning in the deprivation. As I struggled to say anything, and as I was overwhelmed by the encoded madness, I jolted out of my bed, shouting for dear life. I then rotated myself to sit on the side of my mattress, hands on my knees, panting like hell. After I've calmed down, I look outside to see the day was still inactive. I laid back down, not bothering to cover myself back up, unable to sleep. It's weird. As I'm writing this journal entry, I seem to remember more than I initially thought. I know I had dreams just as unorthodox, I'm sure of it. So why can I only remember this one? And why so vividly? I never had dreams this memorable. Is it even worth figuring out why? I have no idea. I had another weird dream. I was back in that room. It's been so long I can't even remember what it's called, but it was where we practice our performances. I was writing something. I couldn't tell you what I was writing. It was illegible. Come to think about it, it kind of looked similar to the symbols in my last dream. I kept writing until I felt this tightness in my chest. At first, I ignored it, but I got tighter, yet tighter. I finally stood up and started making my way to the exit. I turned and told Jevil, which actually looks like Jevil this time, "Hey, I'm heading outside for a bit." Jevil responded, but it was inaudible. He sounded like he was underground, like he was buried alive. I made it out of the room and into this massive concrete hallway. It looked like the hallway to Jevil's cell. I walked down the hallway for some time before my chest started getting extremely tight. I was scared. What was happening to me? The feeling got worse and worse. The hallway felt like it was getting longer and longer, and I was getting slower and slower. My peripheral vision was beginning to encase in darkness. A black vignette. It wasn't long before I stopped walking. I just stood there as I started to faint. I fell to my knees, ready to accept the fall. I fell forward, ready to eat concrete. When right before I made the impact, I woke up. I turned over and sat up to get my bearings, trying to understand what just happened. I didn't know why until I looked over at my pillow. It made sense. The imprint on the pillow. The position I was in right after I woke up. I was laying on my stomach, my face buried in my pillow. I was suffocating myself in my sleep. Something doesn't seem right though. I've always slept on my back. How did I end up on my stomach? Did I turn over in my sleep? I never really move in my sleep, so maybe this was just a one-time thing. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Whatever the reason is, it wasn't scary. Like I accepted dying in my sleep. It was a little scary, but it was a thrilling kind of scare. I can't keep dwelling on this. I have a shop to tend to. Another day, another dream. This is unusual. I never have dreams this often. And with every dream, the more concerning they become. I was performing again. It was a dancing segment, but something was off. It was a solo piece. I'd never done a choreography piece by myself. It was always Jello and I dancing. The crowd was off too. Actually, damn near everything was off. I remember the placement of the show. It was in this room, round and void. The walls were barely visible, but no ceiling seemed present. I think there were bars across from me. Like I was in a giant prison cell. And the crowd was something else. Instead of the lively, scattered audience, the crowd was evenly distributed, standing in this mannequin-esque stillness, and wore a mask of Jevil in various facial expressions, most of it being on the upset variety. I continued my solo dance. This dance felt awfully familiar. After all these years, I still miss it. I still miss him. As I seemingly started wrapping up the dance, I started to rise up. I went higher and higher, arms stretched out, my body still, rising until I couldn't see the crowd anymore. I stopped rising. I was so high up. I was at peace when I balled up my fists, crossed my arms, fist on each shoulder, and fell backward. As I fell, I heard this rumbling noise. It got louder and louder, but it wasn't scary. The noise was comforting in a way. As I felt myself approaching the stage floor, I closed my eyes, accepting my phantom fate. After a moment, I heard a crash of two planks and a sound of cloth tearing. Then, I woke up. No jolt, no scream, no nothing. Just awake. I sat up, processed what happened, then put my head in my hands, feeling like I was on the verge of tears. I don't know what's scarier. The fact that all my recent dreams had ended in death, or that I've become so accepting of it. I don't know what to do. I feel lost. It's not like I can tell people of my suffering. They either look up to me or see me as a traitor. I feel weightless and frustrated, all the same. I need a release of some sort. This isolation, the cost, the loss. I can barely see my clouded thoughts. I see my end growing darker, yet darker. My lantern burning out, life's cotton crawler. These entries were never enough, just a useless bluff. My crochet creations, oh maybe sloppy. I cut and stitch my pre-existing